So I want to give our speaker as much time as possible, so I'll hand things over there. But would anyone like to open us up in prayer today? Any volunteers online? All right, I'll go ahead and get us started there. Father, we just thank you for today. We thank you for the fact that we are here at school. Sometimes homework and assignments and other things are annoying, but we still appreciate the fact we actually are getting to do them in person. We pray that you be with each student, help keep them healthy and strong, and just ask that you watch over and protect as we go through these final weeks in anticipation of Christmas. We just pray all this in your son's name. Amen. All right, so I'm going to hand things over. Our speaker is a gentleman, Mr. Pagon. Some of you may know him, but he's got some interesting experiences, and we'll be sharing those along with asking many of you some questions. So please be prepared to answer those. And if you've got questions along the way, please go ahead and ask him. In the classroom here, online, you've got your mic right in front of you. In the classroom, if you can speak up, because we'll use some videos in the presentation, so I can't use the swivel. So the microphone is on my laptop up here. So especially those in the back row, you volunteer to shout your questions out nice and loud, okay? All right. All right, so with that, the stage is yours.
All right, hey, I'm Garrett Pagon, and I've got a son at Santa Fe you guys might know, Max Pagon. Chase Pagon graduated a couple years ago. And you know, one of the things that's interesting is you're doing your prayer, Jim. You know, we just had Thanksgiving, and we go around and say what everyone's thankful for. And our 11-year-old says modern technology. That's what he's thankful for. And so you think about the ability to do these classes on Zoom, the ability to text your friends while you're doing these classes and sitting in them. That's modern technology. That's engineering. And so there's a lot of cool stuff that's happened. I'm going to go through some of the things that I was really interested in, some of the opportunities that I saw over the last 20 years. And you guys don't even understand just how much the world is going to be related to technology, and just how much every job is almost going to require being able to at least understand software, if not be a software engineer. So you guys are in the right class. And, you know, I think I'd like to get a little something out of you guys first, though, which is I'm interested to know, you know, what do you think engineering is? What do you like about engineering? It could be as simple as, you know, why you're in this class. So if somebody could give me, or a couple people could give me some ideas, I'll share about what my perspective is on that too.
Yep. What is it about engineering you like? Why you're in this class, or other things there? Did I capture it pretty well?
Yeah. Yeah. What do you think engineering is? What do you like about it? Yeah.
Okay. Okay. Spencer said his dad's an engineer and he's thinking about being an engineer when he's older.
All right.
I want to go into AP.
Okay. Brady wants to go into AP Computer Science next year, and this was a prerequisite.
I love CS.
What? I captured accurately?
Yeah.
Okay.
I like computer science.
Yeah. We'll get it. We'll touch into some computers in here as we go through. Yes?
Can I say something?
Sure.
Mr. Pagan, I really appreciate your article on choosing business partners. That was really inspiring.
Were you able to hear that?
I couldn't hear. I appreciate how brilliant Mr. Pagan is, or something like that.
Exactly.
Is that it?
Thomas was saying there's an article you wrote about choosing business partners.
Okay, yeah, on LinkedIn. Wow, somebody's done the research. Okay.
No, actually, at some point we'll have a class and we'll talk about the power of LinkedIn. That's one of the tools that's available to you. But when I was coming out trying to get a job, I had no no access to. But today, when you're trying to research different things, companies, et cetera, is a pretty amazing tool. And that data that you're looking at kind of plays into some of what today's conversation will talk about the amount of information available to you.
Yep.
Any others?
Yeah.
Anyone online? Okay.
All right. That's good enough. I mean, I'll tell you a little bit about my perspective. I mean, curiosity was what got me into engineering. You know, figuring out something new, solving a problem. It's the best thing. And you don't have to be an engineer to do that, obviously, but just in engineering, there's so many opportunities for that. I'll go through a couple of the companies that I started, as well as some of the others that I'm either an investor in or I've got friends that are doing, and it's just amazing the whole spectrum of the things that you can do when you put your mind to it. And there's an interesting problem. In fact, I don't know how much of you all know about Mr. Riley, because he's pretty low key, but the phones that you've got and the ability to send messages and get videos and all that kind of stuff, it's all enabled by some of the work that he and his colleagues did at Qualcomm. Those little chips in that phone allow it to communicate with the wider world. So I know you probably think of Mr. Riley as the homework guy, or you know, something other than someone who enables you to goof off during class, but it's pretty incredible what he and others like him have done to set up the world that you guys are going into, and it's all curiosity. And so I think that was probably the most important thing for me in engineering. And then also, you know, as I got into some of my background, I didn't like to memorize stuff. I like to figure things out, and come to find out you can also wear whatever you want as an engineer. You don't have to go to work in a suit. And that was also pretty cool too. And I didn't like to shave either, you know, so it's a very flexible, very results-oriented type of field. People don't really care about anything other than, can you make it work? Which is one of my favorite things about engineering. So with that said, let me go ahead and go into some of my background here. So, all right, you guys can see my screen now, right?
Yes.
Right? Yeah, good. All right, cool. Yeah, so I grew up in Washington State, a little bit north of here. I'm 43 now, so 1977 when I was born. So, you know, when I was your age, it was 1990s, early 90s. So how many of you think I grew up with a computer, given that I became a software engineer and started companies in engineering? Jim, give me an idea, like in the class, they're about half and half. What do we think?
You got one hand up and a bunch of abstainers right now.
Fair enough. Well, we'll go based on the last class, who I like a lot better. We had a lot more participation there. We'll get to that. About half and half from the last class. Like I didn't have a computer in the house, and you know, there's no cell phones or anything like that. And you know, just to download Google over the connections we had would just the homepage be like 50 seconds or something like that. You know, it'd take days to download a movie if you could even do it. So that's my way of saying it doesn't matter what your background is, you can get into engineering, and you guys have such a huge leg up. It's gonna be such a big part of your life. So what I did want to do is I thought I want to be a doctor. And so I studied biology when I went to college, and quickly learned that if you're going to be a good doctor, what you need to do is you have to be on a 15 to 20 year plan of memorizing a bunch of junk and then doing exactly what other people tell you to do. And there's a good side to it. Don't get me wrong, you're helping people out, you're making them better. And I wanted to be a surgeon, but and talking to some of the surgeons, what they said, it was basically like, you know, changing somebody's oil in their car after a while. You know, it gets to be routine and it's not very creative. And so that's why I went into the Air Force, and they taught me how to be an engineer. So we were involved in putting up satellites into space and taking pictures from space to figure out what America's enemies were doing. And so there's a whole bunch of different types of satellites, but the most common ones were what they call electro-optical, which is just pictures like you'd take on your iPhone camera, except you do it at 100 miles above the earth. And so there's some really interesting stuff that you can get by looking at this data. So for example, in that picture in the lower left side of the screen, that's a night shot. And what it does is track IR and light emissions, IR being infrared, so heat sources. So can anybody tell me what that country is in the lower center?
Any ideas? What part of the country, what part of the world do you think that may be a satellite image of? Looks like China. Okay, got one vote for China.
Mm-hmm.
I got an Egypt.
All right.
Anyone online want to take a stab? What's that, Lexi?
This could be dumb, but is it South America? No.
Not quite. No.
Not quite. Okay. What Dylan say?
South Korea.
Dylan says South Korea.
All right. But well, Mr. Riley, you should give that kid no finals.
Okay, no final.
Because that's South Korea. And what's interesting is not necessarily that's South Korea, or just to the right of it is Japan, because that just tells you how industrialized they are, and they've got lights going. I mean, you can't even tell the shape of Japan because it's so bright and so dense. But what's just to the north of it is North Korea. And so for us, that was critical, because you can tell where the movements are of North Korea, because they were a very belligerent country that was developing nuclear weapons. But you can also tell just how backwards and sad that country is, because they were ruled by this dictator who would do things like drop bombs on his own people when they fell out of favor with him. And so just be glad you live in America. That's one of the stories that came from this, is like it is unbelievable just how some of the rest of the world lives. But we would take pictures like this to figure out where there were movements of mobile missiles, where there were troop deployments and things like that. And it got the idea for me and a partner of mine. There's all this data that's being generated, and there's all these satellites that are being put up. And what can we do with those and all the data that's coming off of it? So we started a company to be able to figure out what to do with that. And that was, 15 years ago. So there were hardly any satellites. And the video that I'm going to show you right now is all the satellites from 2017 that are planned through 2030. So you can see, right now this is modern day or current day. So it seems like there's a lot of them, but the cost to produce satellites and launch them through things like SpaceX has gone down dramatically. And so what that means is that there's more people putting stuff up there, because you can get a picture of the Earth every day now, because you can communicate with every piece of equipment or goods that you're shipping across the world now. And so it's insane when you look at how many satellites and how much data is getting generated. And that's the world that I came out of the Air Force with, was, hey, we're generating all this, but we don't know what to do with it. And so that was our job: figure out how to take that data, how to process it with software, and then tell people what's going on in the rest of the world. And we had a bunch of different projects that were actually pretty neat, that you could see real world impact. And one of them was with the Air Force, where some of the software that we did basically took the data that was collected from these sensors that were on board these aircraft, and it helped prevent American soldiers from getting blown up in Iraq and Afghanistan. So I don't know if you guys know what IEDs are, but stands for improvised explosive device. And basically what would happen in Iraq and Afghanistan is that some of the terrorist factions would put these bombs on the side of the road. And when an American convoy was driving by, they'd set it off and blow them up. Well, what we could do with the drone program was basically take videos all day, every day of a wide area. And then the software would detect when there was unusual activity, usually someone planting a bomb, and you'd be able to trace back to where they came from to either go capture them or take them out or avoid the convoy getting blown up. So it's pretty cool to have real world impact like that, and see some of that. So here's actually, I'll show you a video of one of the products that we had. It's called Pearl. And what Pearl did was essentially take pictures like you would take from your phone, and pictures at random angles and everything like that. And it would create a 3D model out of them. And by creating this 3D model, which is called point clouds, basically like small little pieces of data, that you could create an overall picture of an area where if you're going to go in and you're going to do an assault or you're going to protect the troops that you've got on the ground, now all of a sudden, instead of having a 2D image, you have a 3D battle space visualization where you can put a soldier on the ground so he can see what's going to happen if I go around this corner. You know, where are the army and enemy revetments? You know, where's the ingress and egress points? And you can just do a lot more with 3D imagery. But this was all software based. You just take one image, you compare it to another image, and then there's parallax between the two, which is basically you're just comparing the angles, and then you can figure out what the elevation and depth is on each of those. So that was a really cool project. Again, had a lot of benefits in terms of protecting American lives, which was the goal when we started the company. All right, so that was OG Systems. Now we started another company called GeoSpark, and the whole problem with GeoSpark is that there's tons of data that gets created every day. In fact, like I think it's something like 90% of the world's data has been created in the last 2 years, thanks to everyone on their devices. Everything's computer enabled. You know, there's refrigerators now that are connected to the internet, and there is so much data being produced that humans can't possibly look at it. So you need machines to do it, which was our goal. And here's a question for you guys. So how much data do you think gets produced every day? Give it to me in powers of 10, or give it to me in gigabytes or something like that. Who's got a guess?
And 10 billion gigabytes is the first answer I've heard. Anyone think it's more or less than that?
It's 10 trillion gigabytes.
Okay, somebody says 10 trillion gigabytes. You think anyone thinks it's that or more than that?
100 trillion terabytes.
Yeah, like 50 trillion probably.
What's that, Phoenix?
50 trillion?
50 trillion?
Yeah.
Oh. Like 2 quintillion.
Who said that? Somebody's got access to Google. So yeah, it's 2.5 quintillion. So I mean, the other guesses weren't too far wrong. What a gigabyte's what, 10 to the 9th, and a trillion is what, 10 to the 12th. So 10 to the 21st is what somebody else's guess was. It's a quintillion is 10 to the 18th. And so the way to visualize that is if you have a DVD or a Blu-ray, it's, I don't know, 25 gigs or something like that, and you stack them all up, you're going to have a stack, I think it's 4 times the height of the Eiffel Tower. So there's an incredible amount of data that's getting generated every day. You can't possibly have a human look at that. You need software and machines to look at that. And so when we started that company, the whole idea was, you've got all this data. How can you tell the stability of a region day to day, month to month, year to year, based on all that data coming in? And so if you're a big company or you're a military or intelligence unit, you really want to know, is this place that I'm going into, is it stable long term? Is there something happening with political stability? Is there something happening with protesting, with crime, that it's going to make me want to increase my threat level for that day, or just move somewhere else because the threat's too high? So that's the next company we started, and we're about 3 years into that, and it's amazing. You get to see not only what kind of problems that you can solve on an engineering basis, but also from a human perspective. So, you know, one of the companies that we work with is Live Nation. So they put on all these concerts around the world. And you guys probably don't have any concept of what happens outside of the US because you haven't been there that much, but we are a very stable, trustworthy place. In South America, when they put on a concert, apparently they have to give out free tickets to the local gangs and drug dealers and things like that, so they don't cause trouble. So it's very important to have a software and a security view of some of these concert venues and things like that worldwide, and that's one of the things that this tool provides. So let me see what else. I got another video to show you guys here. So that's the companies I've been directly associated with. There's a couple other companies that are really interesting that I've had the opportunity to invest in, this is one of them. You guys are gonna have to tell me if you can hear the sound, but it's basically a company where they dropped a camera into ponds to be able to count fish, where humans used to do that. And it's pretty cool technology. I'll show you here. I'll click on the video. You're gonna have to read the screen because they're speaking in German or something, because I think it's Norwegian actually, because that's where their partner is.
Maskinlæring har et stort potensial for effektivisering av arbeidet og gir høyere presisjon i beslutningsgrunnlaget. Selskapet har i dag 2 kontor. All programmering og utvikling av dataverktøy skjer i Silicon Valley, mens uttesting, maskinlæring og salg skjer i Bergen. Avdelingen i Bergen består av folk med ulik kompetanse og lang erfaring fra oppdrett av laks. Første produkt fra Aquabite en løsning for lusetelling. Den består av et kamera i meren og en datamaskin kalt Aquabite Brain. Her blir luso identifisert og telt på hundre og tusenvis av laks som svømmer forbi et høyoppløselig stereokamera i meren. Ingen håndtering av fisk, ingen kostbar bruk av menneske til å utføre arbeidet. Oppdretteren får god kontroll på lusesituasjonen gjennom oversiktlige rapporter. Dette systemet i dag i drift hos flere oppdrettere og har allerede bevist at den mye mer presis enn manuell lusetelling. Aquabite sin løsning kan også brukes til å optimalisere fôring, gjøre presise målinger av biomasse, planlegge salg, i tillegg til å identifisere helsetilstand. Ved at hver eneste laks har et unikt prikkmønster, kan systemet gjenkjenne individ og følge vekst.
All right, so anyway, you guys get the picture there. Basically, what they've done is take out what used to be a completely manual process where you have, guys in big boots jump into these pens and count them for sea lice and figure out which ones are skinny and need to be fed more. And now you have a machine doing it. I mean, this is the way everything is going now. I mean, that's such a small niche example. You wouldn't think that'd be that important, but how much do you guys think that company is worth? The one that does all the fish counting with cameras. Any guesses?
Got one person guessed $1 billion. Any other guesses? Thomas? 300. Somebody's Googling, I think. I got a 360,000 revenue.
Yeah. All right. Well, maybe I've been hyping it too much. $1 billion is quite high. $100 million, but that is for something that's such a small application. And I think the revenues are probably right. I mean, for something that has that small revenues to be worth that much, it just tells you the power of technology and where everything is moving. You know, these Zoom meetings that we've got, Zoom as a company, a very simple product, right? Just allow people to do video and screen sharing over the internet. I think it's, I don't know, Jim, I haven't checked it recently, but it's something like $250 billion. I mean, and it was like 5 years ago, Zoom was nothing but a startup. So the rapid increase.
1 year ago, who knew how to use Zoom?
Yeah, right, exactly. Just people in companies and things. And I mean, so that the story there isn't necessarily the value of the companies, but it's how quickly technology is taking over the way that we do business, the way that we do school, any of those things. And in fact, you know, one of the things that I'm really interested in is schools and how school gets done, you know? So is there a better way to do it than sitting in classes where the information might not be relevant or it's boring to students? I mean, so you tell me. I'm interested in hear from you guys. What do you think could make school better? What don't you like about it? Give me a couple ideas, because that might be the next thing that I look at.
He's very interested. Looking at possible new companies and new ideas there. So what kind of ideas, or what would you say as a student? What do you wish was different about school? Would you like to see better?
Maybe like more classes like intro to engineering where it's just like focused on a certain career path. That's what I would say.
All right. There you go, Jim. You got someone that says your class is awesome.
Yeah, kind of always said to have like different classes for like different careers you want to go into, not just like having like the common math class.
Yeah, more practical and tailored. Yeah. Yep.
Anyone in here have any ideas?
Yeah. Well, so one of the ideas I heard about was everyone knows who Elon Musk is, and you know, he's got a pretty good eye on what the future is like, obviously, with electric cars and launching rockets into space. And he took his kids out of school and created his own school. It's called Ad Astra, which I think means to the stars. And they got no tests, no homework, and the questions are really around open-ended ideas and engineering problems where there's no one right answer to it. And it teaches kids how to think, how to be hands-on, and how to be interacting with the world rather than memorizing things. And so that was really interesting to me. And you know, I loved getting my hands on things. Would you guys use something, you know, Maker Lab is, where you can do 3D printing? You've got all sorts of tools, almost like a cross between shop and technology. Is there anything like that at Santa Fe, Jim, or just?
Not currently. The closest thing to that would be some of the things we have in here and some of the things in the robotics lab, but it's still very, very limited. It's more class focused at this point.
Yeah.
But
I don't know, what do people online think are in the class? Would that be something you'd like more hands-on, or do you like classroom learning and using computers?
they like using computers is what I'm hearing here.
Mhm.
We know the computer so much more, like we know a lot about them.
Mhm.
Like we're like, oh, so that's technological stuff. By hands-on, that you mean like training.
By hands-on, the question was, what do you mean by hands-on? I think what you're saying is things like, well, like building your rocket was hands-on. As we go later in the year, if we end up building bridges out of toothpicks, that would be a hands-on. How do you make something that seems like a pretty flimsy piece of wood into a fairly strong structure? I think if you recall back to the start of the school year, I've had bridges built out of toothpicks that held over 80 pounds before they broke. Those were pretty amazing bridges, but they did. That was a couple I had 2 years ago that held that much. It could be the idea of a shop class, having tools to learn how to work with wood or work with metal, cutting laser cutters to cut metal. It could be sewing machines in order to stitch things. One of the activities I'm still exploring, at some point would like to bring in here, is making a computerized sweatshirt. You can send messages over a display or a light pattern on your sweatshirt based on a computer program and the electronics that have been sewn into it. Those are bizarre things out of solving problems in a makerspace.
Yeah, I mean, just have fun with things. You know, a friend of mine has a company that had a 3D printer. It was like a $300,000 3D printer that could make all these sort of engine parts and you know, things for monitoring equipment stuff, very, very precise. And one of the interns that was there ended up devising something in 3D to replace his bike chain because it was broken. And he did it late at night, and everyone came in the next day, and they found out that he was doing this, and he thought he was going to get busted, and he thought it was going to be a big deal, like it was like an issue. He's misusing company property or something, and he ended up getting all this sort of credit for this because he did something on his own. He thought about using it, the equipment, in a new way, and that's what engineering is: figuring out how do you apply the things around you to the problems that you see. And so that's always been one of the most fun things for me. Is it doesn't really matter what your background is, what your education is. What matters is, are you taking, what's that? You got a chain there? Is that 3D printed?
Printed on the 3D printer yesterday afternoon. A couple of my students from past years came in. Here's a little nut and bolt type exercise. Yep.
No, it's cool. It's incredible, the stuff you guys have access to. So I'd encourage you to use that, pursue stuff on your own. So yeah, thanks for your input too on education, because I think it could be done a lot better. It's incredible what's out there too in terms of learning on your own. You know, I mean, I was going to be a doctor. I was a biology major. I didn't know jack about software, and I had to read books. I had to try. I failed a lot. That's another thing. Fail, like take chances, and that's the way that you're going to learn. But you have huge advantages now, like Khan Academy. I mean, you can basically get all this stuff for free now. That was only obtainable through a college degree before. So I definitely encourage you guys to do that. Okay, so let's see. I think that's pretty much it from the formal presentation perspective. I mean, there's a couple of just general pieces of advice for you all. I mean, we've already talked about it, but that Venn diagram at the bottom there is sort of the secret. I mean, if you want to boil down 20 years of experience in business and engineering to something that you guys can use, find something you're interested in, find something you're kind of good at, and then make sure that it's valuable to either the business world or a company or someone else. And then right in that sweet spot, you're always going to love what you do. And it's going to be important, and you'll get paid, as well as have the satisfaction of doing something that's important. And you know, the other big lesson that I've got is, you know, don't be a jerk. Sounds kind of simple. Be a team player, because you're almost never going to be solving something on your own. And you know, we had one of the best engineers we had to get rid of him because he would belittle other people. If it wasn't his idea, we weren't going to do it. And he ended up slowing down the team of 5 or 6 people, and it just wasn't worth having him around, even though he had some great skills. So if you want my simple life advice, that's what it is. Do something interesting to you, be cool, and do it with passion, and go after it, because that's the most important thing in technology, I'd say, is that experience of doing something, learning from it, and then iterating, just getting better every time. So that's all I got from a formal presentation, Jim. I'd love to see if there's any questions or any perspective on anyone here that's going to do robotics with you, or how's everyone think about using engineering? Any questions?
Any questions? Anything from your worksheet or anything about the presentation, or any information on the questions Mr. Pagan has asked you about?
What's your like engineering degree, like in college?
Yeah. So my engineering degree was one class in engineering that I took, really. And that was, it was 8 a.m. It was electrical engineering. It was 98% guys. And I decided that I didn't want to be in it. So that was my only engineering class in college. And I decided I was going to be in biology. I was going to be a doctor. And so after I got out of college, I was in the Air Force, and I decided, because of all this cool stuff that they were putting up into space and all this data that was coming out of that I wanted to learn how to be an engineer. So I was basically self-taught. So I took some classes in the Air Force, as well as just got into doing things and learned the old-fashioned way by learning from experience.
Okay. Thomas?
Why did you leave your own company to join the Parsons Corporation if it was your own startup?
What was that again?
I'll let him. He said he's looking up information on you and asking why you left your own company, your startup, and OG Systems to join the Parsons.
Okay. Yeah. Well, so there's a longer story to it, but essentially we took on investors, and the investors, the end goal for them after 5 or 6 years is to sell the company to a bigger company so they can get a return for their shareholders. And so in 2014, when we took investment money, they were basically going to sell us at some point to a bigger company. So sort of the natural progression for a company of our size.
I'll try and maybe see if I can find another 1 or 2 entrepreneurs of that style where they started a small company, and you can kind of see the different progression and see how how new ideas come about and how they actually then get into the mainstream more and more.